And then I remember when you were presenting at CG, you were talking about growth of companies by stages.
That's correct.
What are those stages?
So as an example, and I get this all the time, people say, hey, I've heard scaling up is amazing. I want to implement scaling up. Mm-hmm. And I was like, let me ask you some questions to make sure it's the right moment for you and it's what you need. No, they told me it's amazing book I have to implement. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's like going to a doctor and said, I've heard penicillin is an amazing medicine. Give me penicillin, right? Like, you have to know if you're sick and what are you sick and if you're the right moment and what's your weight and your age to give you the right medicine. Mm-hmm. Same thing happens. As an entrepreneur and as a coach, I've been coaching companies for 15 years. I've been an entrepreneur for 24. I know when's the right stage and when's the right moment and what's the right problem. Usually entrepreneurs, they don't. Mm-hmm. They just hear a recommendation, they just hear a book or something, and they immediately want to implement.
All in.
That's a big mistake. Yeah. Indeed, you could choke companies if you implement something that is not right. Mm-hmm. Moment could be too big or whatever. Like SAP as an example. I see a lot of companies that I need to implement SAP or whatever system. The company is not ready. It has to be a stage.
Yeah.
So what I did is I said, okay, great. Let me go and study how companies grow in stages. And then what's the right food and attention for each stage? You could have an amazing baby and you want to give him a Kobe steak, $300. They cannot even eat it. They don't have teeth, right? So I said, okay, let's divide companies in babies, adolescents, adults, and then understand what's the right attention, right methodology, and everything. So I really believe there's 4 stages: startup, grow up, scale up, and then you dominate your industry. Mm-hmm. Stage 1 and 2 are pre-scaling stages. You're building the foundation of your business. And if you build the right foundations, then you go into stage 3, that is scaling. And then if you do scaling right, then you get to market domination or you own your market. So we understand the 4 stages and how the entrepreneur has to evolve from entrepreneur to be a CEO.
And you're saying you can't go from startup to scaling up.
If you jump
you can't skip growing.
No. So let me give you an example. Stage 1, the most important thing is product market fit. Mm-hmm. You need to have a product that makes sense, that clients are willing to buy.
Not the idea that I think is wonderful.
That's correct. But in the last 5 years, it was very easy to convince an investor to give you money.
Yeah.
So we saw a lot of entrepreneurs being very undisciplined because it was very easy to convince one investor to give you money instead of convincing 1,000 clients to buy their product. So we said, stage 1, don't raise money, do what you have to do and figure out product market fit. And we have tools and everything to help you prove product market fit. Stage 2 is all about building a replicable revenue model. In stage 2, you have fixed expenses and very unstable revenue. Mm-hmm. And that kills companies. And they want to scale and they want to put good money into bad funnels and systems. Mm-hmm. No, you have to figure out your revenue model, your predictable revenue model before you go to the next level. If you get those 2, then it's the right time to scale. Mm-hmm. And scale is all about execution. You have to be very, very disciplined in execution. You and I were talking about Jim Collins earlier. Jim Collins, if you see his flywheel, discipline, thought, discipline, strategy, discipline people, discipline, execution. And that's what gives you the curve. Same here. If you have a product market fit, you know how to sell it. Now you could scale it.
Yeah.
That's kind of our formula. And then when you scale it, it's all about being focused on doing one thing well and just doing one thing. More companies die of indigestion, trying to do too many things. So our job on stage 3, keep them focused, discipline the execution. If they're able to do that, then they will dominate their industry. There's a couple of things that are important. First one, in stage 2, you have to decide if you want to have a scale-up or a lifestyle business. And I believe the best size of a company for balance of quality on life and money, 10 to 15 employees. I have a lot of clients, they do 10 to 15 employees. They do probably 3-4 million. The owner nets $1 million, $1.5 million. Mm-hmm. You're happy as hell. Oh, if I'm doing $1 million now, if I get to 50, I'm going to do 5 million. No, you're going to make less than what you're doing today.
Yeah.
So there's a valley of death between 20 to 70 employees. And we help companies go through that. But before they jump into valley of death, I help them understand what's going to happen in the valley of death. You need to have certain money and tools to be able to go through that disciplinedly. And then the second big decision, once you get out of the 70, 80 employees, now you kind of got out of the valley of death. I call it sell or not to sell. Once you get out of that, the company has much less risk, and you're going to get a lot of offers to buy your business.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, your business is worth at least $10 million. Once you cross that, all the private equity funds in the US will buy you. Today, for Growth Institute, I get probably 2 or 3 a month. Hey, you build a great company. It's time to get some money off the table, and they start to lure you.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of moves you, but most important, your family. You know how many times I've had discussions with my wife saying, hey, you already built it. You work 50 hours a week or 60 hours a week. It's time to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's retire. Let's have better time. Your kids are growing up. They have 3 or 4 more years to go to college.
The sirens.
That's great. So it's a really, really, really tough decision for the founders to decide what to do. So we help a lot on go through that transition correctly. Because as I said, once you cross your freedom point, you go from risk off because you're building it to risk on. And it's very, very important that you understand where you're going. And if you could take some chips off the table and have some stability, buy some houses, get some apartment complexes or something, and be more stable in revenue. We help them kind of go through those decisions correctly.
Yeah.
So it's very important that you understand the stages, your evolution, and what's the right moment to do what at your company. If you do that, the probability of you scaling is much higher, but most importantly, the drama. You will enjoy the ride of scaling a company. I imagine you've seen a lot of people that they're not enjoying running their company.
Well, it's interesting because I started on the realtor side and then I transitioned to the wholesaler side. And the one consistent theme I've always said, because people are like, Steve, I want to scale. To which I typically reply with, I've been there. I've done the scaling. It's not as sexy as you think it is.
It's not.
Revenue goes up, but take home goes down.
Yeah.
So you're working harder for less money, right? But they want to do it. And my question always to them, like, there has to be a purpose. Because the question I always ask them, name one person you know that has 6 salespeople or more and is loving life.
Very few.
Very
6
few.
sales agents.
That's the number I always pick, right? Because 6, you got to spend a good amount of money on marketing to feed all of them.
Oh, yes.
To make enough money, to deal with the transaction volume, to deal with the TC, to deal with the administrative people that hate the salespeople because salespeople are typically sloppy with their paperwork. Their notes are awful. So you got all these things you got to deal with. You talked about the drama earlier.
That's exactly right.
I've dealt with all of this.
That's exactly right.
And so I always ask them, like, name one person that you know that has 6 salespeople or more and is loving life. They exist. You know, you work with Frank Cava, Eric Brewer.
They have them.
They've got it.
But they are seasoned investors.
Right.
I'd say that they have